Hi, my name's Isabel Hart, 24 years old, and I have just completed my bachelor's degree in finance at UC Berkeley after 4 grueling years of studying and working part-time to the point of exhaustion. I have a twin sister named Gabrielle Gabby Hart. Though we're the same age and grew up under the same roof, we're nearly opposite in every way. Gabby is outgoing, obsessed with fashion and parties, while I am calm, introverted, and spend most of my time buried in books and academic projects. But the biggest difference between us has never been about our interests, it has always been in the way our parents treat us. That morning, I was sitting in the library, finishing up the last bit of paperwork before graduation, when I opened an email from the university's finance office. The subject line hit me in the face. Outstanding balance. Final semester, $38,000. I read the number over and over, hoping it was just a system error. My heartbeat quickened as I called my parents to ask about it. The moment the call connected, my father's voice came through, calm to the point of disbelief. "Oh, that money. We used it to buy a new Tesla Model Y for Gabby. She just graduated. She deserves it." I froze, my hand gripping the phone going numb. My mother's voice followed, soft but cold. "You'll make money soon enough. Gabby needs a strong start." In that moment, it felt like all the air around me had been sucked away. The money that should have allowed me to step into life without a financial burden had turned into a luxury gift for a sister who had never had to worry about money a day in her life. I swallowed the anger rising inside me, said nothing more, but silently promised myself I would never forget this day and I would not let it pass as if it had never happened. Have you ever been placed at the bottom of the priority list in your own family? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments so I know I'm not alone. I still remember clearly, even after all these years, that the difference in how my parents treated Gabby and me was never subtle or hard to spot. We are twins, born on the same June morning just 7 minutes apart, but even from a young age, I felt like I was always starting from a different line. On our birthdays, while Gabby tore open wrapping paper and squealed over a silver charm bracelet or the latest iPod, I would sit and open a box of advanced textbooks or a brand new backpack for the next school year. My parents explained that I loved studying, so practical gifts suited me better, while Gabby needed emotional encouragement through shiny, exciting things. Back then, I simply nodded, trying to convince myself that they loved me just in a different way. Family trips were always shaped around Gabby's interests. Every summer, our parents would ask where we wanted to go, but my suggestions, places like the history museums in San Diego or a tour of a wildlife preserve in Oregon, were quickly brushed aside. Instead, the final plan was always Disneyland, Universal Studios, or shopping districts in Hollywood, where Gabby could spend hours taking pictures, filming videos, and shopping. I went along with a smile, but the feeling that I was just tagging along, never truly getting a choice, sank deeper each year. Once, I asked why we couldn't split the trip so each of us could have a destination, and my mother simply laughed. "You love studying. Those things aren't as important as the family's happiness." That family she spoke of had never really included me. I grew up hearing the phrase, "Isabel can take care of herself," like it was a double-edged sword. It sounded like a compliment, but in reality, it was an excuse for my parents to ignore my needs and wants without guilt. When Gabby needed money for costumes during high school performances, my parents would find a way, no matter what. But when I needed to purchase advanced math software, they told me to apply for scholarships or work extra hours to cover the cost. I became used to fending for myself, finding my own path, and not being asked whether I wanted help. Meanwhile, Gabby was so protected, she rarely had to solve her own problems. My parents often said, "She's more fragile, she needs more investment." I never knew whether that investment meant love, money, or absolute priority. I only knew that all of it flowed toward Gabby, while I stood on the sidelines, quietly learning how to stand on my own without a hand to catch me. After that phone call with my dad, it took me several days to calm down. The feeling of being left out had been a constant through my childhood and college years. But the fact that they had taken the exact money meant for my final semester's tuition and turned it into a brand new Tesla for Gabby was still a blow too heavy to process. I knew that waiting for them to change their minds or return the money would be like waiting for rain in the desert. If I wanted to graduate on time, there was only one path forward. I had to take care of it myself. I started combing through every bit of savings I had scraped together from previous part-time jobs, selling used books, tutoring math, waiting tables at the cafe near campus. But even combined, it was a tiny figure compared to $38,000. I had no choice but to find a job immediately, one that could earn money faster than odd shifts here and there. And as if fate wanted to throw me a lifeline, that very week, I received an email from one of my professors recommending me for a part-time junior financial analyst position at an investment firm in Oakland. It was a mid-sized but reputable company, with offices on the upper floors of a glass building overlooking the port, about a 30-minute drive from Berkeley. At the very first interview, I met Mr. Douglas, the company's chief financial officer. He was a man in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, and a warm, steady voice. After listening to me explain my situation and career goals, he simply nodded and said, "Kid, I see something in you that a lot of young people lack: the ability to stand firm when no one's there to catch you." I never expected that short conversation to become the turning point it was. Just a week later, I officially started the job, balancing classes and work, scheduling my time down to the hour so I wouldn't miss a single deadline, whether for school or the company. The work in Oakland was anything but light. I handled financial data, prepared client reports, and double-checked calculations for investment projects. But in return, I learned countless practical skills, from reading complex financial statements to presenting analysis results in front of an entire conference room. Mr. Douglas became more than just a boss. He was a mentor. He often stopped by my desk at the end of the day, asking a simple question, "What did you learn today?" and waited for a real answer, not a throwaway response. Once, when he saw me staying late to finish a financial model, he just stood there for a moment before smiling. "You're not just doing a good job at this, Isabel. You're building yourself." That sentence stayed with me through my final semester, fueling me not to give up even when exhaustion hit hard. In the final weeks before graduation, I was juggling the last of my tuition payments while preparing for my capstone presentation at school. Some days, I would leave the office at 6 p.m., drive back to Berkeley through heavy traffic, eating a quick sandwich in the car while mentally reviewing my slides. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw dark circles under my eyes, but they seemed brighter somehow. Brighter because I knew I was saving myself, no longer waiting for anyone else to do it. Then the email from the graduation committee arrived. They announced that the ceremony would be held at the Greek Theater, a massive open-air venue in the heart of Berkeley with a capacity of over 8,000. I had sat there once before, in the middle of a summer concert crowd, and dreamed of one day walking across that stage in a graduation gown. Now, that dream was about to come true. Excited, I sent a message to the family group chat, sharing the time, the location, and even how much the moment meant to me. But only a few hours later, my mother replied briefly, "Not sure we can make it. We have to fly down to Los Angeles for Gabby's Tesla delivery party." The cold message, punctuated with a smiling emoji, left me staring at my phone in silence. In my head, I could hear Gabby's giggles whenever she was given priority, and I could feel all those times I told myself I was strong enough not to need anyone beside me. I typed slowly. "I understand." Just 4 words, no exclamation mark, no question. I didn't want to plead or show disappointment. I had known for a long time that, in my parents' hierarchy of priorities, I had never been at the top. But this time was different. I wasn't going to quietly endure it. I felt a silence taking shape, a distance growing, and I knew I would let it stay that way. In the days leading up to graduation, I bought my own cap and gown and ordered a bouquet of white roses, my favorite, to present to myself that day. I told no one in my family about any of this. Instead, I shared it with colleagues and a few close friends at school, people who truly cared and would be there to cheer for me. Mr. Douglas said he would come, along with several company executives. He told me, family isn't always blood. Sometimes, it's the people who choose to stand by you when you need them. Every night, as I stood on the balcony of my small apartment near campus, looking down at the quiet street, I pictured myself walking across the stage at the Greek Theater not to prove anything to my parents, but to affirm to myself that I had made it. Without their money, without their congratulations or their presence, I had still reached the finish line. And for the first time, I began to think that maybe this was the most valuable graduation gift I could ever give myself: complete independence, free from the need for validation from those who had never truly believed in me. On the morning of graduation, I woke earlier than usual, the Berkeley sky still wrapped in a thin veil of mist. In my small room, the black gown and square cap had been hanging neatly from the night before, as if waiting for the moment to be worn. I spent a few minutes just looking at them, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought me here: the sleepless nights working on reports, the rush-hour drives from Oakland back to campus, the savings drained to the last cent, and the quiet tears shed over the fact that my parents would not be there. I put on the gown, fastening the buttons carefully, placed the cap on my head, and adjusted the golden tassel. In the mirror, the reflection staring back was not just a young woman about to graduate, but someone who had learned to stand firm when every familiar support had vanished. I picked up the bouquet of white roses I had bought for myself, placing it gently in a cloth bag to carry later. The Greek Theater came into view as I stepped out of the car: a grand outdoor amphitheater, with rows of curved stone seating facing the main stage, framed by lush green trees and a clear blue sky. From a distance, I could already hear the music of the student orchestra mingling with the lively chatter of thousands of people. I joined the long line of graduates, everyone in their gowns, faces lit with anticipation. The atmosphere was both formal and electric, but somewhere deep inside, there was still an emptiness I couldn't quite name. When the ceremony began, the MC introduced each department, each group of graduates, before announcing the names one by one. Every time a name was called, cheers erupted from the audience, the voices of parents, friends, loved ones. I smiled and congratulated each friend as they crossed the stage, exchanging hugs and words of praise. But when I heard the MC begin to announce the finance department, my heartbeat quickened. Isabel Hart, Bachelor of Science in Finance, summa cum laude. The MC's voice echoed across the amphitheater. Applause and cheers rang out, but I recognized them as coming from my close friends and colleagues: Mr. Douglas, Karen from the analysis department, and a few classmates. The sound was warm, but in that moment, I couldn't stop my eyes from drifting toward the audience section where I had once pictured my parents sitting. Those seats were empty. The morning sunlight fell across them in a pale golden wash, cold in a way that felt almost deliberate. I walked up to the stage, shook hands with the university president, and accepted the diploma framed in dark wood. When it touched my hands, I smiled brightly, making sure that smile was complete because I knew it wasn't just for me, but for everyone who had believed in me and stood by my side, even if we didn't share a last name. On my way down, I heard Mr. Douglas's voice ring out, "Good job, Isabel," followed by the cheerful whistle of my friends. Those sounds pulled me out of the fleeting sadness, reminding me that I had another family, one bound not by blood, but by respect and trust. When the ceremony ended, I stepped out from the graduates section and headed toward the small group waiting for me. Mr. Douglas was the first to come forward, shaking my hand firmly before pulling me into a warm hug. "You did it. And you deserve every good thing coming your way," he said with conviction. Beside him, Karen handed me a small envelope with a smile. "This is from all of us at the department. Congratulations, Isabel." Inside was a card signed with messages from each colleague, along with a gift card, so I could buy something just for fun. We stood chatting for a while, taking photos under the sun. In each frame, I noticed that my smile was no longer forced the way it had been that morning. Maybe it was because I had stopped waiting for the presence of those who had never valued mine. In that moment, I no longer felt like I was missing anyone. I had people who had chosen to be here for me, and that meant far more than those meaningless empty seats ever could. I knew this graduation day, even without my parents' support, would be a milestone I'd never forget. Not because it was perfect, but because it marked the moment I finally cut the thread of expectation for their approval. Leaving the Greek theater, I clutched my diploma tightly, feeling a mix of relief and determination. I had walked a long road no one believed I could finish, and now the next path would be entirely mine to choose. After the ceremony, while I was still talking and taking pictures with colleagues in front of the Greek theater gates, Karen leaned in and whispered, "Don't head home just yet. We booked a table at an Italian restaurant by Lake Merritt to celebrate you." I was caught off guard for a moment, then laughed and agreed. Lake Merritt was less than a 5-minute drive from campus, and I had strolled there on crisp autumn afternoons before, where the water shimmered under the sun and tall palms cast shadows across the red brick walkways. But today, the lake seemed dressed in something different, livelier and more luminous, reflecting the swell of emotions rising inside me. Trattoria del Porto sat right on the edge of the lake, its large glass windows opening to an unobstructed view of the water. As I stepped inside, I saw a long table already set, covered in crisp white linen, tall wine glasses lined up neatly, and plates of toasted bread with olive oil and balsamic vinegar releasing a soft, fragrant aroma. My classmates and colleagues were already there, the sound of laughter and clinking silverware mingling with the warm, rich tones of Italian music playing softly in the background. I was pulled into the center, receiving countless hugs and congratulations. Mr. Douglas sat at the head of the table, in the perfect spot to see everyone. Dressed in a gray suit and a deep blue tie, his face held its usual composure, but his eyes shone with joy. Once everyone had settled into their seats and the appetizers were served, he stood, holding a glass of red wine, and signaled for attention. "We are here today to celebrate Isabel's outstanding academic achievement," he began, his voice low and steady. "But that's not the only reason. Isabel has been working with us throughout her final semester, balancing school and work while maintaining an extraordinary level of performance. She has shown not only skill, but resilience and spirit qualities any company would be lucky to have." He paused, looking directly at me. "That's why I am pleased to announce that Isabel will be officially joining our company as a financial analyst, with a starting salary of $120,000 a year, plus performance bonuses." Now, in an instant, the whole table erupted applause, cheers, and congratulations filling the air. I sat there, eyes stinging, feeling as though my heart had just expanded in the best possible way. It wasn't about the salary figure, though it was impressive, but about the fact that, for the first time, I was being recognized publicly without comparison to anyone else, without the backhanded, "she can take care of herself" label that had always been used to excuse leaving me behind. I stood, raising my glass in return. "Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Douglas, for believing in me when no one else did. I never imagined this part-time job would become such a turning point. What makes me happiest today isn't the diploma or the salary number, but knowing I'm in a place where my value is seen and respected." Douglas smiled and clinked his glass with mine. "The whole company is excited to work with you, Isabel. And I'm certain this is only the beginning." His words echoed in my mind, each one driving another nail into the certainty that I was on the right path. Dinner continued with seafood pasta, wood-fired pizza, and lively conversation. Laughter rang out in the warm space, blending with the golden light reflecting off the lake outside the glass windows. Looking around the table, I saw faces not tied to me by blood, yet offering the care and respect I had once wished for from my own family. And in that moment, I understood that sometimes, family is truly made of the people who choose to stand by you when you have nothing to offer but your genuine self. When the dinner at Lake Merritt ended, I drove back to my small apartment near campus. Along the way, the city lights slid past my car windows, stretching into long streaks of color. In my mind, the laughter and congratulations from my colleagues still echoed. It was one of those rare nights when I felt truly whole, not because of the good food or the exciting news about my job, but because I had been surrounded by people who saw me and valued me. As soon as I set my bag down on the table and hung my graduation gown in the closet, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a video call from my mother. I was momentarily surprised. She rarely called me at night, especially on a day like today. But the moment I accepted the call, I understood why. The screen was filled with the image of Gabby standing in front of a brand new Tesla Model Y, pearl white and gleaming under the garage lights. A large red ribbon was still tied neatly over the hood, exactly like in the company's promotional photos. My mother stood beside her, holding the phone as she panned over the car like she was shooting an advertisement, her voice brimming with excitement. "Look at this, isn't it beautiful? We just picked it up today. Gabby's so happy, right, honey?" In the corner of the screen, Gabby beamed, her hand gently stroking the steering wheel as if it were a piece of fine jewelry. I sat down, keeping my voice calm. "I see it, but what about my final semester's tuition? $38,000. How do you plan to handle that?" The smile on my mother's face faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered her light tone. "Oh, Isabel, don't make a big deal out of it. Didn't you already manage it on your own?" I opened my mouth to respond, but my father's voice cut in from somewhere behind her, deeper and without any pretense. "And another thing," he said, stepping closer to the camera. "I heard your company is about to sign a big contract with your uncle's restaurant chain. I've got shares in that. Make sure you give family a good discount. You know, when you're doing business with relatives, you should show some priority." "Oh, so..." I stared straight into the camera, into his face so sure of himself, as if his request was the most natural thing in the world. In that moment, a bitter truth settled in. My parents hadn't come to my graduation, they hadn't paid my tuition, they'd used that money to buy Gabby a gift, and now, the very first thing they wanted from my new job was to find a way to profit from it. I tightened my grip on the phone, taking a slow, deep breath. "We'll see," I replied, my tone even and clipped. It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't an outright refusal either, just enough to close the conversation here and now. I ended the call, set the phone face down on the table, and sat in silence for a long while. Outside the window, the distant hum of traffic rose and fell like small waves. In my mind, pieces of information began fitting together: my father's claim about having a stake in the restaurant chain, their financial troubles, and the fact that I'd been assigned to oversee this contract at work. A new picture was forming, and for the first time in years, I realized I was in a position to decide who would truly get priority from me. After hanging up, I stayed still, staring at the wooden tabletop as if the grain patterns were sketching a map in my mind. My father's words replayed, "I've got shares in that." Each one stamped in my memory, sparking a cascade of questions I suddenly needed answers to. I opened my laptop, logged into the company's internal system, and began searching for details about the project my father had mentioned. The contract was flagged as a high-value prospect, worth 7 figures, with the potential partner being an Italian restaurant chain headquartered in Sacramento, with locations scattered across California. When the company name appeared on my screen, I froze. Bella Vita Dining Group. This was the very same chain owned by my cousin Richard, a man I'd only met a handful of times at family gatherings. I pulled up the financial analysis reports prepared by our research team. In just the past 18 months, Bella Vita had shuttered 3 locations, revenue had dropped nearly 25%, and their bank debt was at an alarming level. Without fresh capital from this deal, there was a strong likelihood they'd have to sell off assets or even face bankruptcy. Then, in the appendix, a single detail made everything click into place. A portion of Bella Vita's profits was distributed to minority shareholders, and there it was, on the third line, David Hart. My father wasn't just involved, he was one of the people who would directly benefit from any bailout or new contract. I leaned back in my chair, letting the puzzle pieces fall neatly into place. Suddenly, everything made cold, perfect sense. My tuition money taken to buy Gabby a Tesla, my parents skipping my graduation, and now, their attempt to leverage my new job to save a dwindling income stream. But unlike before, I wasn't the daughter left on the sidelines. This time, I was holding the winning card. The next morning, I met Mr. Douglas in the small conference room next to the CFO's office. He placed a thick folder in front of me and said, "Isabel, I've reviewed your analysis. Very thorough. This project is delicate because the partner is in a weak position, but there's still a well-known brand. I want you to take direct responsibility for negotiating with them. You have full authority over the terms and pricing, as long as you ensure maximum benefit for the company." I nodded, keeping my tone steady. I understand. But inside, something unfamiliar stirred, not exactly excitement, not simply the weight of the task. It was the crystal-clear awareness that the balance of power had shifted. In this game, I was no longer the piece being moved at someone else's will. I was holding my own hand now, and the ones who once dismissed my place were the ones who should be nervous about my next move. That evening, sitting alone on my balcony, watching the city lights scattered like stars on the ground, I thought about my father's words. Priority for family. For the first time in my life, I realized I had the absolute right to redefine family in this story, and this time, priority would not come from blood ties, but from the respect and fairness I chose to give. On the day of the contract signing, the company's headquarters was lit from the lobby to the grand hall. Life-sized posters stood at the entrance, showcasing the new partnership with Bella Vita Dining Group alongside images of elegantly plated Italian dishes. Inside, rows of chairs were neatly arranged, and a massive LED screen behind the stage displayed the two companies' logos on a continuous loop. I arrived over an hour early to review every document and clause one last time, not because I feared making a mistake, but because I wanted to ensure emotion wouldn't derail my judgment. As guests began taking their seats, I spotted my parents immediately in the front row, seated beside Uncle Richard. My father wore a charcoal suit with a deep red tie, his posture composed but his eyes glinting with something I recognized all too well: expectation. My mother exchanged polite smiles with a few people nearby, looking perfectly at ease in the setting. Uncle Richard, sharply dressed, couldn't hide the tension in his demeanor. He needed this contract like he needed air. When the welcoming music played, CFO Douglas stepped onto the stage. He wore a dark gray suit and a deep blue tie, his presence radiating confidence and authority. After a few opening remarks about the company and the significance of today's deal, his tone shifted unexpectedly. But before we proceed with the signing, I'd like to introduce someone who played a pivotal role in negotiating this agreement and ensuring that every term benefits both parties. Someone I've been proud to work alongside from her time as a part-time intern to becoming a full-time employee, and today, I will read the offer letter we sent her. The entire hall fell silent for a few seconds. Douglas unfolded the papers in his hand and read each word clearly from the offer letter. Financial analyst position, starting salary of $120,000 a year plus bonuses, along with praise for her outstanding academic record and work that exceeded expectations. Please welcome, Isabel Hart. Applause filled the room. I walked up to the stage, each step heavy but certain. Standing in the center of the lights, I scanned the audience and met my parents' eyes. My father gave a slight nod, a silent reminder of the task he had laid out in our call the night before. My mother smiled, while Uncle Richard leaned forward, clearly waiting for me to say exactly what they wanted to hear. I smiled back, unhurried. Holding the microphone, I spoke slowly, letting each word carry its full weight. I've reviewed this contract thoroughly. I understand the circumstances and the value on both sides, and I've decided there will be no family discount. The price will follow standard market rates. The moment the words left my mouth, it was as if all sound had been sucked from the room. My father's eyes darkened, my mother's brow furrowed, and Uncle Richard drew in a sharp breath like someone had just punched him in the gut. But from the rows behind them, applause began, at first from a few, then spreading through the entire hall. It was the applause of colleagues, clients, and other guests who understood I had just placed the company's interests and professional principles above any personal relationship. I kept my smile, handed the microphone back to Douglas, and stepped aside, knowing I had just delivered a message more powerful than any justification. The days when they could treat me as a pawn to be moved at will were over, and the decision now rested firmly in my hands. The moment I finished speaking, silence gripped the front row. My father reacted first, leaning toward my mother and murmuring something before looking up, his voice low but loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Isabel, you're letting emotion get in the way of business. Family is family, you can't just—" Uncle Richard quickly cut in, forcing a strained smile. "Listen, I know you're being professional, but this is a chance to help each other. A small discount wouldn't hurt anyone." My mother's brows drew tighter, her eyes holding a trace of reproach. "Do you really want to make things difficult for the whole family, right here in front of everyone?" I took the microphone back from Douglas, stepped forward, and looked directly at all three of them. My voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, clear, and final. Priority should only be given to relationships built on respect and fairness. Blood ties are not a free pass to privilege. I paused, letting the words drop like heavy stones, ones no one could pick up and twist to mean something else. In the audience, a few people nodded in approval while others murmured to each other. My father tilted his head slightly, trying to mask his discomfort. My mother turned her face away, and Uncle Richard exhaled, his shoulders sinking. They knew exactly where they stood now without the authority to command or pressure me as they once had. Douglas stepped forward, shook my hand once more, and then invited Bellavita's representative to sign. Though there was a flicker of hesitation, they bowed their head in agreement. In truth, they didn't have many options. Their finances were already on the brink, and this contract was the only lifeline left. The full market rate was written clearly in the signed document, without a single family discount clause added. Once all the signatures were in place, I handed the contract over to the legal department and stepped down from the stage. Applause rose again, this time louder, fuller, and entirely unified. It wasn't just celebration for a successful deal, it was recognition of my decision to hold firm to my principles. I felt every step I took, light but solid, as if the floor of that grand hall had turned into a new road. I had just stepped onto a road with no space for outdated obligations, where I set and defended my own boundaries. As I left the stage, I didn't look back at the front row. Not out of anger or bitterness, but because I knew that from now on, my eyes would stay forward toward the people who truly respected me, and toward a future where I could walk without bowing to unreasonable demands, even if they came from the very people who had brought me into this world. 1 year after that signing day, my life had changed in ways I had once only dared to imagine in the quiet hours of the night. I had been promoted to senior financial analyst, taking on larger, more complex projects and occasionally leading teams of new hires. The work was demanding, but it gave me complete independence financially and emotionally. With the savings I had built, I bought my own condo in Oakland, a place with a balcony facing the bay, where in the mornings I could watch mist drift across the water, and at night, see the city lights spill across the horizon like a ribbon of stars. I kept only minimal contact with my family. We exchanged a few messages each year, mostly for birthdays or Thanksgiving. There were no more heated arguments, but there was also no false sense of closeness. I set clear boundaries. No discussions about my work, no lending money, and no participation in vague family projects with unclear benefits. Surprisingly, after some time, they seemed to understand and no longer tried to persuade me to break those rules. The bitterness of the past had faded, replaced by a calm certainty because I knew I had done what was right for myself. That afternoon, after a long day at work, I left the office earlier than usual. My silver electric car rolled onto the highway, heading toward the Bay Bridge. The sky was shifting into the orange gold of sunset, the last rays of light scattering across the water like sheets of gold leaf. I lowered the window, letting the cool breeze rush in, carrying the salt of the sea and the lingering warmth of the sun. Soft jazz played from the speakers, blending with the quiet hum of the motor. As the car climbed onto the span of the bridge, I looked out toward the horizon, where the water met the sky. This past year had taught me many things, but the most important was this. True happiness doesn't depend on who acknowledges you, it comes from being confident in the road you've chosen. I thought back to every time I had been pushed to the sidelines, to the empty seats on my graduation day, and to the moment I said, The price will follow market rates, in front of hundreds of people. Each of those memories was no longer a wound, but a milestone on my journey of growth. I glanced toward the front-facing camera in the car, smiling as if speaking to someone sitting right across from me, as if speaking directly to you, the one listening to this story. If you've ever been pushed to the bottom of the priority list in your own family, remember this. Your worth isn't defined by the gifts they give you, but by the life you build for yourself. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. You deserve respect. The car glided smoothly across the bridge, wind in my hair, the last light of the day warm against my skin. I knew I still had a long road ahead, but the difference now was that the wheel was firmly in my hands and I would never let it go again.